Hey, Steve, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear and see me?
Hear you. I can see you just fine.
Okay, great.
That's some great gear behind you. Is that your LA home studio?
Yeah, it's my home studio. It's yeah.
That's impressive to say the least. When did you first know to build a home studio?
When I moved to Los Angeles, I remember I went to. I was still actually living in New York, and I came out to. This has to be came out to Los Angeles maybe around I don't know 93, 94, and Billy Idol and myself went over to Duff McKagan's house, and he had a killer home studio, and that's when I decided to move to Los Angeles, and also seemed like everybody had like some form of home studio.
Yeah,
Some more elaborate than others. This is kind of morphed. It was smaller, ended up getting bigger, and now it's everything is pretty much in the computer, and a lot of this stuff behind me is redundant. I don't use it anymore, so it'd be great to shrink it down, but I haven't really addressed that yet.
got it. I find that most people got on the studio, like home setup kind of situation, 98, 99. Like they took a publishing advance and then
Okay,
they
right.
pulled it out of. In your case, you just knew right away that it was shifting towards home recording.
Yeah, I mean, living in Manhattan, nobody had a home studio, and B, recording studios then were still $225 an hour,
Right.
and I realized, and also just like the vibe, you weren't under the gun so much to, you could take a break and leave it for the evening or whatever. You didn't have to worry about breaking down your gear and stuff, and just seemed like more. And I get daylight.
The future is so bright, you need to be wearing shades. So
As I am, yeah. I mean, in LA, we've had a heat wave for the last 2 days. It's
right.
literally 80 degrees today. So,
We don't have that in New York right now. What can you
ye-
do? But
yeah, yeah. where,
so,
where in New York are you?
Long Beach, Long Island, not too far
Okay,
from Rockaways, where you grew up, right?
sure. Yeah, yeah. I played all of those clubs in Long Island, and yeah, I know. I know. I went to summer camp in Long Island, and
Really?
oh yeah, yeah.
Where did you go on summer camp? Not Coleman Country.
No, there's a brilliant camp. It's still in existence. It's called USDAN,
Oh,
USDAN.
yeah, I went to USDAN. Yeah.
Did you? Okay, and that's where I got introduced to flamenco. The teacher was a flamenco guitarist, and it was great for me because I didn't I it's always good. I went to high school performing arts, and it's always great to be around other kind of kids that maybe don't fit in. A lot of kids that gravitate towards music and dance and theater. They're usually the misfits, and I fit right in with them. So I love that camp.
The summer I went to USDAN, Mariah Carey came by as, kind of a surprise media op kind of thing.
Right.
And they got all the people, all the reporters there, and they
Uh-huh.
said, I hope you were able to take some of what you learned at USDAN and apply it to your huge successful career. And in front
Mhm.
of everyone, she goes, no, not really. And I went, oh. But when
Well,
you went to USDAN, are you aware of other people from the rock world that had gone there?
not used, Dan. No, no. My high school, yes, but not the summer camp. But like I said, up until that time, I had these. I was pretty young. I think I went. I was 12, 11 and 12,
Wow.
and I went for 2 summers. And all the music teachers that my parents got me were like these fuddy duddy. It wasn't like now, it's like if you wanted to learn a Beatles or Stones
Yeah.
thing, in Rockaway, the local teacher was, he was about Burl Ives and and this kind of stuff. And well, but at USDAN, yeah, I met, the teacher was a flamenco guitarist. He had actually escaped. He was a Romanian gypsy. He escaped the Nazis in the Second World War,
Wow.
and his life story was incredible. But he didn't really care so much about the notes on the paper and all. He just wanted you to love what you were doing and to be open to hearing new kinds of music. He was definitely not by the book kind of guy. So I thought he was brilliant. First guitar teacher that I ever really, wanted to please, wanted to show him I was into it.
I definitely want to ask you more about flamenco because I know that you have a new project related to that into the works. But before I get there, one thing that's always blown my mind about you and your career is when you look at most people's IMDb or their Wikipedia or their All Music Guide, whatever it is that you go to for your immediate research, you'll see that there's like a couple of years that they took off or a couple projects that didn't get off the ground. And when I look at you, you were working before Billy Idol. You worked nonstop during Billy Idol, like, hey, there you are with Robert Palmer and Michael Jackson.
Right.
Then after that, and before that, there was solo albums. Then there was the Neurotic Outsiders. There was the super group with Terry Bozzio.
Right.
I don't see, was there a period of a year or two where you didn't do anything? I don't see any, like Steve Stevens took off a year.
No, I mean, because, fortunately, I love the instrument, and that's where it stems from. So I'm always looking to learn more about the instrument, hence doing a flamenco record or introducing flamenco into some other rock things. It always seems like I find a home for whatever my latest, interest is, so to speak. I think it's, I think it's the fact that, I don't just play one particular style.
Mm-hmm.
So people, that ask me to come aboard something or to do something, they know that there's a deep well to pull on. I can do pop music and I like doing it. I'm not just about, it was never just about shredding guitar and all that kind of stuff. It was always, and I always sought out to work with other musicians that I could learn from. I think that's key. I didn't just want to work with the small circle of people that did what I did, so I ended up working with, Juno Reactor, it was techno, because at that time I knew nothing about that world. And got introduced through another project to Ben Watkins, who was the Juno Reactor guy, and just said, "Hey man, I'll come to England to work with you." "Oh really? Yeah, I'll come. I'll stay. Let me stay for about 4 days and just let's see what we come up with." And lo and behold, we end up with a track that gets used for Robert Rodriguez film or so. I think if the thing is, you have to please yourself first. If you like what you're doing and you're excited about it genuinely, and you're not just trying to think what might fit into the market or this or that, if you like it, other people will like it. That's always been my rule of thumb.
Well, absolutely, to your credit, and continuing on the compliments, I hope it's okay that I'm complimenting you, because a lot of times people go, "Oh, enough about me," Gilbert Gottfried style.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But a lot of your peers, keep in mind that you're still working steadily and there's new music coming and all that. But a lot of the people who first, quote unquote, made it early 80s, mid 80s, they all go with this narrative of Kurt Cobain killed my career. That's when the work dried up. I've even heard David Lee Roth say that. And David Lee Roth's career never died, in my opinion, always made great new music.
Right.
But you never went that way. It never seemed like grunge killed my career, because after you left Billy, you had the work that you did with Vince Neil, which was still played on MTV and all that. Do you feel like things ever slowed down on a commercial point for you? Because as an outsider, it doesn't look like it did.
No, I mean, the thing is, I'm old enough to have seen changes, cyclical changes in the music. I started professionally playing in a cover band and playing Long Island with that same scene that Twisted Sister was, became
Rat Race Choir.
Rat Race. All of those guys are friends of mine. Yeah. So we were all influenced by early 70s, a lot of English rock, particularly. And then suddenly, I remember the first time I ever heard a Sex Pistols song there was a cover band that played it. And they might have played God Save the Queen. We were on a bill and I heard it. And I went over to the singer. I said, "What song is that?" They said, "Oh, it's this new band." This was 77. Pistols had just been released. It's this new band out of England, Sex Pistols. I said, that's incredible, you know, because it sounded like Communication Breakdown or something
Yeah.
to me, you know, had that energy that maybe was missing for so many years. You know, early 70s was great, but then it kind of, you know, it kind of went up its own butt a lot. So then I heard that. And then this explosion in New York of CBGBs and bands like Television and Talking Heads and Blondie. And so I saw this cyclical change. And, you know, when I met Idol, you know, I think I still had, you know, really long hair and he said, you know, if you should cut your hair. I know a hairdresser. And I was always willing to, like, he turned me on. I remember we were sort of bonding over music. We had just met, and we were talking about Lou Reed and then early glam stuff, which he loved, the English stuff, and, you know, Americans, the Doors and Creedence and all this. And then he turned me on to Susie and the Banshees, and their guitarist was really inventive. And I said, oh, you looking to do stuff that's textural guitar like? Yeah, I love that, you know. And I went, great, I'm your guy, you know. And it was exciting because you had, you know, a lot of those guitar players were, you know, Andy Summers from the Police and XTC and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, and I kind of, you know, embraced it. I never saw it as, so it was another cycle. It was, you know, and that time, you know, the punks were really against the dinosaur bands, you know, a lot of whom were influences of mine, but I got it, you know. And then when grunge hit, you know, of course they're going to, you know, I mean, you know, where else is music going to go after, you know, obviously Eddie Van Halen as a guitar player was brilliant, but I couldn't take all the guys trying to be Eddie. You know, we have Eddie, and he's still growing. Now he's playing keyboards, and Eddie's even tired of being Eddie, you know.
Yeah.
You know, he's looking for other ways as a songwriter, and I just, you know, I guess because I lived in New York, we didn't have that LA. The guitar players in New York, I think, were more influenced by the punk and new wave stuff, as well as liking and appreciating, you know, classic rock guitar players like Page and all that. So I think maybe because of the New York thing, I always accepted change and always thought change was good. And I think fortunately having worked with Billy Idol, you couldn't pigeonhole him because it was, even throughout grunge, it was still cool to like Billy Idol. It was never.
Absolutely.
You know, I think they liked it because he had a history of Generation X, and also our records, you know, we were just trying to make good songs. It was never a vehicle for guitar playing or the drumming, or it was always like, let's, yeah, it was always a team effort to make a great song. So we kind of, I guess, rode through that whole thing.
The small world nature of it all is, I understand that recently you've been writing with Sam Hollander and Butch Walker. Yeah. And the first Butch Walker solo album after the Marvelous Three, it's like the first or second time I interviewed him. And he was trying to make it very clear that it wasn't a singer-songwriter thing. He was trying to say, it's a rock thing, you know, like Billy Idol. That was an excuse or example that he used for me. And hearing that it's Sam Hollander and Butch, was this connected through Crush Management or Jonathan Daniel?
No, the initial thing came from Instagram. Wow. Butch, when I was on Instagram, Butch sent me a message and said, you know, I owned a Steve Stevens guitar, and I said, well, actually, I'm a fan of your records. You know, this is before the Green Day record, and I said, you know, I have a feeling you'd be really good to do a Billy Idol record. And he said, man, I'd love to. And we just kind of kept in touch. And I planted that little seed. I said, Billy, I know the guy who should do the next record. It's Butch Walker. And then he did the Green Day record. And I played him. I said, now don't judge this. But when I heard that, what was that? That Light 'Em Up song by...
not Panic at the Disco,
no,
Fall Out Boy, or
Fall Out Boy, right? I said, forget about who it is. I'm not even going to tell you. I said, listen to the song, and I played it. And I said, that's state of the art production, great song. It's got such good hooks, and I love that kind of what I love about Butch is he takes eras or different things and blows them up, makes them cartoon-like, and if he's going to use a rock thing and I loved it. And I just said, you just know when somebody's in your zone, and I got to say, he's one of the most talented people I've ever worked with. I really is.
Yeah, and ironically, same management as Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco and Green
Yeah,
Day. They all have
yeah,
the same manager.
exactly. Yeah, and
Jonathan
then
Daniel,
yeah,
who Jonathan was a protege of Kim Fowley in that scene.
right.
Did you know Jonathan by any chance peripherally back then?
I knew his singer in the band when he was living in New York, which was Electric Angels.
Hmm.
And I was friends with Shane, the singer, and then obviously after that, I was friends with Ryan Roxy.
Yes.
He took me to see. He said, "Oh, you got to see this band. There's a disco night at the Viper Room." It was actually the guys from. They were called Metal Shop and
Yeah.
Disco Nights, or so, but it's the guys from that parody
Steel
band.
Panther. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were great. They were absolutely great as a disco band. I think Jeff Scott Soto might have been the singer at that time.
Yes, he was. Exactly.
But I brought Idol. I brought Billy down. I said, because we love those songs. We always loved those kind of. And I said, to hear this band do them live is just incredible. It was the most fun night on the Strip.
Well, all these names that keep coming up when we say Butch Walker, Jeff Scott Soto, what all of them seem to have in common is, yes, they had a mainstream rush with fame. They had their MTV singles, but these are all people who found success long-term as collaborators who maybe in their 40s and 50s just continued to do awesome. So in your case, when you had success, I'm assuming you were in your late 20s when Billy was like world famous the first time, mid 20s.
I was actually like 23 when Rebel Yell came out. So
Even younger. Wow.
Yeah.
Were you one of those guys that was like the Pete Townsend, Hope I Die Before I Get Old? Or were you actually having those New York roots? Were you thinking, well, this is going to be my pension when I'm 40, 50, 60?
I don't think we even thought that far ahead, I mean, you got to realize even then in the early 80s, we didn't have bands touring and playing and making records into the 60s. It was kind of, it's not that I was aware of, the Townsend phrase or anything. It just didn't really, there wasn't a market there. But of course, if you had a crystal ball, you could look at, if you have a fan base, they're going to get older too. And they're going to, the post baby boomer generation is still going to want to go to concerts. And, now when I was a kid, you didn't share music with your parents. There was a specific cutoff, we weren't going to listen to Sinatra and Benny Goodman and all this kind of, we were, from the time Hendrix came along, I think, or the Beatles, really, it was like, that is our music. It's the youth music. But now it's different. I think rock and roll has been around so long that kids do, I mean, our audience, you do see parents and their kids come together to shows. And it's, the Billy Idol show, man, the age range is really wide, really wide.
Yeah, the last time I saw you live, my wife and I went, it was Jones Beach, you with Billy playing with Bryan Adams.
Right.
And that was such an interesting billing, in my opinion. I'm curious if this viewpoint was behind the scenes, where Bryan Adams, who I respect the hell out of, he has written some great material that wasn't hits, but he's ballad centric. I know he wrote those songs with Jim Balance for Kiss, so he has his hard rock roots and all that, but he's kind of a ballad guy.
Right.
You and Billy are the seeds of punk, knowing Generation X and all that. The only thing that you guys had in common was, well, they both had a bunch of top 5 hits in the 80s that went up on a bunch of soundtracks. I didn't understand that pairing at all. Of course, it made sense to pull from different audiences, but was it kind of a head scratcher for you guys, aside from everyone being great?
No, I mean, we've played with a lot of different bands and a lot of different genres, I guess. it was just a way for us to get into, it was a good pairing because it was a way to sell out every night in larger venues.
Yeah.
And then Brian, to his credit, was doing those venues before, tours before us, but it was just a good guarantee that, it is not going to be any soft markets. On a couple of shows, it did feel a little bit like date night, husband and wife,
for sure.
And we're a little bit, like more rough around the edges.
Yes.
But he kicked ass every night, and it's like when you have, he's also had this. What we identified with was that he's got the same guitar player that's been with him as long as I've been with Billy, same drummer. So he's got his core band, of guys who've been through it. So there was that kind of, we related on that level, so to speak. And it's nice to, hey, we're always happy to win over an audience that ordinarily wouldn't come to a Billy Idol show. We love that sort of stuff.
It was also intriguing to me that based on everyone had to do abbreviated sets because you have two headliners, and you guys have had so many hits that there wasn't time to do Cradle of Love and a couple of other big hits.
Right.
So it must be flattering and weird at this point in your career where if you, Steve Stevens, get on a stage for 60 minutes, you're still going to have to leave out like 6 hits at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, what a problem to have. I remember when we toured Australia and New Zealand with Cheap Trick, and on the side of the stage, they don't really have a set list. They have a Bible of songs that's on the side of the stage, and there's got to be 80 or 90 songs. They're all ready to be played. The band knows them all, and the songs that they would leave off were just like massive, So I remember going to Rick, hey, why don't you play? He goes, oh, you want to hear it? We'll put it in the set tomorrow. And he goes, look at the list and pick some songs, So, what a great problem, what a great dilemma,
The story that a friend of mine was talking to Joe Elliott from Def Leppard backstage. And he goes, hey, why don't you play that and that and that? And he said, well, we only have time for the number 1 hits. And he wasn't being sarcastic or flippant. It was just, no, they only have time for the number 1 hits.
Yeah. And it's, especially if you have new music out, because we'll have new music out this year. And we had done the previous record that we did with Trevor Horn. And we want to play the new music, obviously. And you have to, you have to give and take with an audience. You give them a big hit, and then you slip them something maybe they don't know, or just to keep us fresh and relevant. Because we love playing those songs, but we also want to play new music. One
for me, one for you. That kind of a dynamic, and
kind of.
Writing with Butch and Sam Hollander, one thing I've heard from a friend of a friend who co-writes a lot of stuff is that Sam has a unique role in writing where he doesn't have a guitar in his hand with chords. It's more like he's a vibe guy, that he's able to guide it almost like a leader. Is that speaking out of turn, or, because I know how many hits he's contributed to over the years?
Well, yeah, I mean that, and you got to start with the personality. Sam was introduced to us by Butch. Butch we had started recording. He wasn't available. We wanted to continue writing. He said, go see Sam, write some songs and come back. We'll reconvene. Well, Sam's a New York guy. Andy Warhol was his babysitter at one point. I mean,
I never heard that. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, his mom was the interior decorator for Warhol, and it was, he knew all of those people in New York. So, super interesting guy, super intelligent, and Billy and I loved him. We loved working with him, and he's a concept guy. A lot of times, great songwriters maybe play minimally an instrument or something, but they sit down and you write with them, and a great song has to be like a film. It has to have a concept and a theme and an opening and title credits and all. That's the way great songs should be. And He was terrific. I mean, I just, as a person and as a collaborator, and same with Butch. I could see why those guys mutually respect each other.
And I remember reading that Sam Hollander had a record deal for kind of a kid and play like hip hop group way back in the day, that it might have
Okay.
been through Jive or Selecta Records. So he's another case where the first deal did not make him a household name. The second deal maybe didn't, but then the long-term success, where if you just knew to hold on, you'd have a career in music.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you there's a track. I don't know if it'll be released initially, but there's one song we did with Sam, which is a musical style that seems, I can't say too much about it, but it seems like an obvious thing that Billy Idol would have done, but he's never done. And it was, Sam came up with this idea, and it's one of the for me, one of the favorite things I've written and played on with Billy in the whole career. I can't wait for people to hear it, because it's so different. It's like, for me, it's great. There's still uncharted waters.
I'm looking forward to hearing everything that comes out of the sessions.
It's all really good. Really, it's we've done final mixes now, and we're looking at who's going to put it out and distribution and all that stuff. But it's really good. It's everything that I would hope Billy Idol now would sound like. It's really good. It's good, very guitar based, but in a new modern way. It's I couldn't be happier with it.
I think it's great that while you're doing that, you also have the flamenco project in the works. Is that going to be a full length or a series of full lengths?
I don't know. I just it always keeps coming. It's a very easy thing to do because it doesn't require a lot of gear, and my buddy Ben Woods, who's a flamenco guitarist, all I have to do is call him up and say, "Hey, come on over. Let's work on some stuff." So it's just that thing that I always have in my back pocket that doesn't require me to sit at a computer and after doing something which is let's say working on new Billy Idol music, there's a lot of attention to detail, to recording and tones and electronics and all this. A lot of my energy goes into that. So then I can completely throw all of that stuff away and just sit and play guitar with Ben, who's just a brilliant flamenco guitar player. So it's nice to have that balance for me.
So you mentioned flamenco goes all the way back to Usedan for you. And one of the things I brought up earlier was that you've always come project to project to project. Some of it just came out in Japan and we don't even know about it. That's one of the incredible things, that as rich as your discography is, some people don't even know about some of the stuff. Yeah. So doing projects with somebody like Terry Bozzio, that's another virtuoso. Did you find over the years you had to kind of scale back where they're going, Steve, that's too smart. Please dumb it down, more bar chords?
No, I mean, I think maybe when I first joined up with Billy Idol, the idea was to say the most with the least amount of notes, especially when it came time for a guitar solo. It certainly wasn't about flash and it took a while. It was, the first album I was still finding my feet. Mm-hmm. And White Wedding was the last song to be recorded, and Billy wrote that. At the end, the tail end, we needed a single, and we didn't have one, so they locked him away in the studio, and he came out with that. But that was kind of when the light bulb went off, and I went, oh, that's going to be the jumping off. That's the level that we have to start the next record with. Next record being Rebel Yell, mm-hmm. And by that time I'd been in the studio, understood what was needed to make these songs great, what was needed to tell the story of the song, and I think I understood. And it's not about being complicated. It can be complicated if that's appropriate, but figuring out what's appropriate is the real key. So it was never a case of I don't think anybody ever said to me, "Don't play so many notes" or anything. It was so. I work with nice people. They say, I don't know about that, and I know what they mean.
With the not playing so many notes, I find that happens with a lot of people of the guitar hero ilk. I'm calling you a guitar hero. You did not call yourself that.
Yeah.
Anyone who's doing flashy leads, Top Gun, theme excluded and all that, it's not always very concise. And I found your recordings to be very concise. The guitar solos that you do live are tasteful. Where I'm going with that is, I just imagine that there was going to be a moment in your life where someone went, "That's great, but too many notes," and that was the turnaround point that happened. But apparently not.
Yeah, I mean, I was really fortunate when like I said, it comes down to good people. The other person that deserves a lot of credit is Billy's producer, Keith Forsey.
Right.
Because when we came in to do the first record, there were some stylistic things which I really didn't know about. Cleaner, like Stratocaster type guitar, maybe little R&B, funk stylings in this. And a producer now very easily could have said, "Okay, thank you. Let's call the session," and then get on the phone with the session guy, and he's going to come in and knock all those things out. Keith never did that. He always gave me the opportunity to try. And what I would say to him is, play me an example of what you mean, And I was never afraid to say, I don't know. I would never try to cover myself or frustrate or try and make something a vehicle for my guitar playing that really wasn't a vehicle for the guitar. And I think my honesty is what helped me a lot. And I'd say, "Oh, what do you mean? Oh, okay, I can do that." Or he'd play me some, R&B thing or something, or some, whatever it was. I'd say, "Okay, give me a minute." And I'd kind of come up with my version of that. So I was fortunate that I had people that gave me a shot at it, because producers now don't really have that. They don't have the time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of producers are instrumentalists, and the minute you leave, they're going to do it, or their buddy's going to do it.
Yeah.
So I really have a lot to be thankful that they gave me, and I learned as I went, obviously.
And we've seen in small doses over the years, you outside of the music, when there's a Billy Idol behind the music, the reality show that your wife did, there's been little pieces of you, but you've been able to kind of maintain your mystique. There's been as far as I know, there's been no Steve Stevens memoir, no documentary, nothing like that. Is all that kind of by design, that you leave it all on stage and in the studio?
I think it was just, the examples I had as a kid. I remember when the Elvis '68 comeback special came on, and my cousins down the street from us had a color TV.
Yeah.
So me, my mom, and my dad went over to watch the Elvis comeback in color. And the wives, my aunt, my mom, "Oh, he looks great, Elvis. Oh, remember this song?" And me and my dad are going, "That guitar player, wow, look at what he's doing." And it was always, and then you had Jimmy Page, who was, I was always more comfortable being the guy, fronting a show for 2 hours and being the host. That's not my gig. I don't, I'm not comfortable in that. I'd much rather be the guy behind playing the music, but I do relish being the band leader. I love the arrangement. I love rehearsing. To me, rehearsal is such an enjoyable thing, because I get to work with the musicians and come up with new things. I remember when we started doing the Vegas run with Idol.
Yeah.
And I said there was a lot of songs, especially off Whiplash Smile, that we weren't able to play back then because we didn't have the technology and we couldn't incorporate sequencers and this kind of stuff. So we just kind of didn't do it. And I said, "Billy, we can go back into that catalog, update it." And he said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Give me a couple of days with the band." And I loved presenting it to him. And he went, and the way we did Don't Need a Gun on Storytellers with flamenco guitar and Spanish percussion. I it, it, I said I can't even. When I told Billy, I said I can't even explain to you this idea of flamenco guitar for "Don't Need a Gun," which is very much a techno. It's electronic music.
Mhm.
And he said, "What?" And I said, "Just give me a day with the band." And then when he heard it, he went, "You're crazy, but I love it." So it's I love that. I love that part of my job, so to speak.
That makes a lot of sense that you wanted to have just enough attention, hence why you have, the 5 to 10 minute feature slot in the middle of the show, and then you go back to,
Right.
to your section.
Right.
And I guess, your friend who we recently lost, Sylvain, who gave you your name, as the story goes, he was kind of the same way, where he was as essential to the creativity of the New York Dolls as David Johansen was, but
Yeah.
he took a step back. So I think that, again, a compliment. Apologies on that. I think you're one of the people who made it cool to be the second guy in all these bands that co-writes the songs, that does the solo albums, but doesn't do all the interviews and features and on camera.
Yeah, I just think that's I mean, obviously the attention is on the singer. And from the day that I joined Billy, I had been with a band previous to that had a record deal with Island Records, and it kind of fell by the wayside. And I realized I needed to work with musicians that challenged me, but most importantly, as a guitar player, I needed somebody who had a complete vision and understanding of what they were and what they wanted to do. And that when I met Billy, it was like, that's the person that I need. I can work with that. I can help build that brand, or whatever you want to call it, because I think I'm just naturally suited towards that. I don't know why. Um, but it's when you have sometimes when you and I think that's why our longevity has lasted. When you have a band
Mhm.
of everybody who has an equal say or something, you got 5 or 6 guys, and then the money starts rolling in, and everybody,
Yeah,
it's a recipe for disaster sometimes. And I will tell you that in most bands, when people think it's 5 guys that are all equal, it's not.
very few.
There's usually 1 or 2 guys who got the deal or have the decision making process, and it works well. There has to be one guy. It's just otherwise the song and music and songs get pulled from every direction. And I think maybe I can think of U2, who are seems like everyone equally kind of has their. It's very rare. Most
Very
bands have.
rare.
Yeah, most bands usually have the singer and the main songwriter, guitarist, who are who present the other guys with the music, and then it kind of goes from there.
It started off with Van Halen until I think 1984, where they were splitting the publishing. I think REM did it until they did it. The Chili Peppers, Poison, but not a lot. You're definitely right about that.
Yeah, yeah. I just too many cooks sometimes, and I think and Billy trusts me. I mean, obviously by now we've worked together so long that
Right.
he knows I know the terrain. I know the keys that are going to work, when we go to work with people, or so. If we go to work with, say, a new songwriter like Butch, who we haven't worked with before, and we start something, I usually go, "That's not the best range for Billy. Let's try this or that." And he knows I have his best interests at heart.
Well, do you have time for three more quick questions, topics?
Yeah,
And
sure.
you're free
Yeah,
man. Okay. The first
yeah, yeah.
I have the pleasure of professionally working alongside my wife. Now, my wife has to hear much more about Van Halen than she would like to. Uh, there is that Venn diagram of, like, she likes this, I like that. And then there's
Mhm.
the little overlap that's okay. Now, your wife is known to travel with you. She's been in and around entertainment and all that. Does she like the same music that you do? Or, okay, I'm immediately getting a no.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I listen to a lot of. Uh, I guess because I've wondered about this, why I still listen. Look, in a lot of cases, the music that you discovered when you're 13 and 14 is going to sit with you for the rest of your life,
Huh?
because you're first discovering music. You don't know how it's made. You're just enamored with it, and it's like, um, uh, it's a time in your life when I guess it just has the most impact. I've even seen, someone asked me, what do you try and what's a good gig to you? What do you try and do during the performance? And I said, I try and give the audience the feeling that I had when I was 14 years old, going to Madison Square Garden to see the Who or Yes. In my case, I was a big early Yes fan, and I said I try and give them that feeling that I had as a kid. That whatever it is. I saw Angus Young recently did an interview, said exactly the same thing. He
Really?
tries,
Okay.
yeah, like the first time he saw Led Zeppelin, he wants to give people that feeling that he had. So a lot of that music, my wife's 20 years younger than me. She's not going to identify with, progressive rock, or she doesn't want to listen to that. And actually, in her case, the music that she liked as a kid, I think her first shows were like death metal bands,
Really? Okay.
yeah. She went to like Milwaukee Metal Fest when she was like 12 or something. She was a real metalhead, but now she really likes R&B and pop music, which is good for me because it'll expose me to stuff. If she hears something, she goes, "You should hear this song." And it's not, it's not my cup of tea a lot of times, but I can appreciate something that's good. And it keeps me at least aware of what's happening outside, because I don't get exposed to it otherwise. My manager's not going to call up and go, "Hey, you want to hear the new Taylor Swift record?" I'm going to be like, "Not really," but you know, but the stuff that we grew up on, and there's a way to utilize it and to present it to a whole new generation. Obviously, Miley Cyrus having Billy guest on something, and there's a lot of rock influences on her record, little nods here and there. Maybe I actually had performed Rebel Yell with her dad once, and he's a big Billy Idol fan. So I imagine maybe Billy Ray played Rebel Yell when she was a little kid, and now she gets to work with the guy. So it's kind of like I said, it's always been cool to like Billy Idol. But my wife, I remember my wife playing me a Miley Cyrus thing it's got to be 5 or 6 years ago. And I go, wow, and my wife liked her because my wife loves Dolly Parton, obviously.
Yeah.
Modeled her breasts after her. But she loves Dolly. And she said, "This is Dolly's niece. Smiley, she's on this TV show." She goes, "But forget about that. Forget about Nickelodeon. Listen to the songs, and they're really good." And it was obvious she had a really good voice. So I get exposed to stuff by that. But my wife doesn't like the music she likes Billy Idol, and she likes our new stuff because she's a very good person to bounce an idea off of, because she's an average listener. She's the person that's going to hear it on a car radio for the first time.
That is a great answer. This next question's a random one. I'm not sure how to phrase it, but when you look at who's influenced who in terms of music, it's more obvious to say musical influence. But I've always looked at CC DeVille as an amped up Steve Stevens. Like I always thought that he kind of took the blueprint of Steve Stevens and amped it up in a lot of different ways. Is that something that's ever hit your radar, that he's
Not really. I think maybe it's just the fact he's from New York, another New York guitar player, and we grew up with Johnny Thunders, and there was a lot of bands around New York that had that image and stuff. But I don't think you could take away from the fact that he wrote some really good songs for that band, and anybody could have done those songs in any style and probably had hits with them. And us New York guitar players, we're entertainers. So, we're not guys that are just going to stand up there and go, So, I think in that respect, I don't really know him. I think I've met him once, and there's a lot of those songs were very good.
And then his band After Poison, Samantha 7, showed that he could really write a power pop song. And then in your case, you've shown, hey, I can do more than rock, more than new wave, more than punk and all that. So I thought, projecting here,
right,
that he also said, what would Steve Stevens do? Well, he would do the opposite of what made him famous for a couple of years, then come back to it, which you went back to Billy around the same time he went back to Poison.
Okay, right, yeah. I have no idea whether I was on his radar or not. I couldn't say.
And then my last question, nothing to do with anything. Do you have a TV discovery that you could pass along? Because everyone's watching more TV these days.
Well, I'm waiting for what's the show? The why blanking out now on the name of the show with Offred. do you know what I'm talking about? The women in the white suits. Oh, I think
Netflix
it's
or Amazon.
Yeah, it's like HBO. Oh my God, what's it? Wait, hold on. I'm going to Google. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of this.
Little Lies, Big Little Lies.
No. Okay, hold on. Here we go. I'm Googling it. Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, okay, yeah. Everyone's talking about that. I haven't seen.
I'm waiting for the new season. It's incredible, and my wife and I started watching it at the beginning of the COVID lockdown, and there's a lot of correlations to a lot of the Christian fundamental stuff that the country is involved in, and it was so well done. And then the last thing we watched was what was the other series? I get sucked into a lot of these, kind of series things, but. What else? But I'm waiting for that. I watch a lot of on the movie. What is it called? The movie channel or something. There's every night from about midnight on, they play all of this detective series from the 70s. Mannix. There's Mannix. Columbo, there's a whole maybe I'm not so much into. I love Mannix, because I grew up on those shows, and they're kind of like they're so cheesy, yet there's no CGI, they're just and everything is so 70s. It's like stepping into a bit of a time warp, but I just love the kind of kitsch factor about them, and I guess when I saw those as a kid, I was living in New York. So now when I watch them as living in Los Angeles, I recognize all the locations, and it makes much more sense to me. Oh, okay. That's, I love seeing all that kind of stuff. So, so I watch a lot of that, the late night stuff. And I watch a lot of horror, and I'm still a sci-fi and horror buff. So, the last series we watched was the chess one, Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit, yeah.
That was also really good. Stylistically, is really good. For the same reason I liked Mad Men, because I love that attention to detail, to sets and set design and wardrobe, when they can really capture an era. I'm fascinated with how they managed to do that in films.
Well, the key is you have great taste outside of music, not exactly a commonality. So
yeah, and I love all of the. I'm a huge film noir buff. I love all of those 50s, late, mid 40s gangster films and all of that stuff. So I watch all that black and white stuff. I love black and white movies.
Cool. I can't thank you enough for your time. I'm so looking forward to the Flamenco project, the new music with Billy, and hopefully we get you on the road again very soon in one form or another. I
hope so too. Yeah, I hear whisperings about late this year. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly.
Have a great rest of the day and just keep it coming.
All right. Thank you for the compliments.
Thanks, Steve. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Paltrocast.